Hello, class. Today we are going to talk about one of my absolute favorite poems, and that is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Now, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, to put him in context with some of the other stuff we've read, is a romantic poet. He's one of the better known romantic poets. That means that he's all about nature and reclaiming spirituality and acting as a social conscience and all of those things that William Blake was really about. Coleridge is kind of cut of the same cloth. Now, the poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, is a narrative poem. It's written as a story uh, told by an ancient mariner, which means an old sailor. And it's about his experience that he had while on the high seas, and a series of unfortunate events befell him and put him into a situation where he is forced to go around telling other people this story. So one of the things that students sometimes struggle with when reading this poem is that there is a framing device. And what that means is that there is if you've ever seen the film The Princess Bride, this won't make any sense if you don't catch this reference. But if you do know the film, The Princess Bride is a very famous movie. And in the film, there is a framing device of a grandfather telling his grandson a story while he is sick. And the film itself is the story that the grandfather is telling the child. So there is a device that frames this story. And that's what's going on in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So students will be like, wait, I thought we were just at a wedding. Now we're on a boat. It's both. There is a guest who is going to a wedding. He is stopped by an ancient mariner, an old sailor, who then tells him the story of his own experience. So that oscillation between the wedding and the boat, it won't catch you off guard if you know that it's coming. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. It may take me 1 second to pull it up here. And I will go ahead and read it to you as I have all of this other stuff, and I'll stop periodically to fill you in on various parts of its interpretation. All right. I have a lot of this memorized, not all of it. My goal is to one day have the whole thing memorized, and I'm not far off, but we'll just read along. It is an ancient mariner, and he stoppest one of three. By thy long grey beard and glittering eye, now wherefore stopp'st thou me? The bridegroom's doors are open wide, and I am next of kin. The guests are met, the feast is set. Mayst hear the merry din? He holds him with his skinny hand. There was a ship, quoth he. Hold off, unhand me, grey-beard loon, eftsoons his hand dropped he. He holds him with his glittering eye. The wedding guest stood still, and listens like a 3 years child. The mariner hath his will. So basically, what I just said is there's this guy going to a wedding, and he's stopped by an old man, and he's like, "Let me go, you old fool." And the old man starts talking, and this guy cannot choose but listen to this old man. He has to hear this story. Even if he wanted to walk away, he can't. He's compelled. Okay. The wedding guest sat on a stone. He cannot choose but hear. And thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. The ship was cheered, the harbour cleared. Merrily did we drop. Below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. The sun came up upon the left. Out of the sea came he. And he shone bright, and on the right went down into the sea. Higher and higher every day, till over the mast at noon, the wedding guest here beat his breast, for he heard the loud bassoon. The bride has paced into the hall, red as a rose is she. Nodding their heads before her goes the merry minstrelsy. The wedding guest he beat his breast, yet he cannot choose but hear. And thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. So he's like, he hears the wedding starting, and he wants to go to the wedding. He can't. He has to listen to the story. And now the storm blast came, and he was tyrannous and strong. He struck us with his o'ertaking wings, and chased us south along. With sloping masts and dipping prow, as who pursued with yell and blow, still treads the shadow of his foe, and forward bends his head. The ship drove fast, loud roared the blast, and southward, aye, we fled. And now there came both mist and snow, and it grew wondrous cold. And ice mast high was floating by, as green as emerald. And through the drifts the snowy cliffs did send a dismal sheen. Nor shapes of men nor beasts we ken, the ice was all between. The ice was here, the ice was there, the ice was all around. It cracked and growled and roared and howled like noises in a swound. At length did cross an albatross. Through the fog it came. As if it had been a Christian soul, we hailed it in God's name. It ate the food it ne'er had et, and round it flew. The ice did split with a thunder fit. The helmsman steered us through. So the ship goes south towards the South Pole. They eventually get into the South Pole where they're surrounded by ice. Now, at the time that this was written, which was, I believe, 1834, it said, at that point in time, the South Pole was one of the few places left that had yet to have been discovered. It was like a natural space that was unimpeded by humanity. So to have this as the setting, the destination for this voyage that the Mariner is on, is an intentional choice made by Coleridge. And we see it's a situation that the men really aren't prepared for, and they get stuck in the ice and they get kind of trapped. But then comes an albatross. Now, if you know anything about an albatross, it's like the biggest flying bird there is. I think ostriches are technically the biggest birds, but the biggest flying birds are albatrosses, and their wingspan can reach up to 11 feet in length, which is insane if you think about it. So this bird comes along, and it's like as soon as the bird comes through, the ice splits open and they can drive out. So the sailors in this story attribute a supernatural significance to the presence of this bird, and that continues as a major theme of this poem. So make sure that you have this bird in your forethought as we read on. And a good south wind sprung up behind, the albatross did follow, and every day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. In mist or cloud, on mast or shroud, it perched for vespers 9. Whilst all the night through the fog smoke-white glimmered the white moonshine. God save thee, ancient mariner, from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why look'st thou so? With my crossbow I shot the albatross. So that's the wedding guest in the last stanza there interjecting like, dude, what is your problem? Are you okay? And then the mariner confesses to his evil deed, which is, for no apparent reason other than boredom, he decides to shoot this seabird that had befriended everyone on this boat. He decides to shoot him with a crossbow and therefore kills the bird. All right, part 2. There are 7 parts, by the way, so buckle up. The sun now rose upon the right. Out of the sea came he. Still hid in mist and on the left went down into the sea. And the good south wind still blew behind, but no sweet bird did follow. Nor any day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. And I had done a hellish thing, and it would work 'em woe, for all averred I had killed the bird that made the breeze to blow. Ah, wretch, said they, such birds to slay that made the breeze to blow. So he kills the bird, and as soon as he kills the bird, the wind stops. And so the sailors blame him. They're like, you are the reason that this has happened. Your killing of this bird is the reason that we are now not enjoying a good breeze. Nor dim nor red, like God's own head, the glorious sun uprist. Then all averred I'd killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. 'Twas right, said they, such birds to slay, that bring the fog and mist. So as soon as things start going favorably, though, the crew just decides, you know what, maybe killing the albatross wasn't such a bad thing. Yeah, you got rid of the breeze, but you also got rid of the fog and mist, and that was really a pain. So we're glad that you did that. Good job. So it's like they're fickle. They oscillate. They're back and forth, and their view of nature is contingent upon its ability to serve their own situation in the moment, right? Okay. The fair breeze blew, the white foam flew, the furrow followed free. We were the first that ever burst into that silent sea. Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down, 'twas sad as sad could be, and we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. All in a hot and copper sky, the bloody sun at noon, right above the mast did stand, no bigger than the moon. Day after day, we stuck, nor breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Okay, so a painting, you think of a painting being still. The situation that these sailors now find themselves in is something called the doldrums. And this is, of course, not a problem in the modern era because most boats are not powered by wind. Most boats are powered by their own self-contained engines, and so therefore it doesn't matter if the breeze is blowing or not. In the time of the ancient mariner, however, The boat is powered by the wind. So if the wind stops, you stop. And if you were on a transcontinental voyage, if you were, for example, traveling from the United States to Europe, there would be a time if you were in the doldrums where you would just have to wait. And if that time exceeds the supplies that you have brought on the journey, it's very possible that everyone on the ship may run out of supplies and starve and die, or at the very least have extreme hardship before reaching the destination. It was a very serious situation that we don't think of in our modern time. And so that's where they find themselves, as we assume a consequence of killing the bird, right? All right, now this is a very famous stanza, this next one. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. So they're surrounded by water and they're dying of thirst, and yet they can't drink because the water is salinated and it will cause them to dehydrate, right? The very deep did rot. O Christ, that ever this should be. Yea, slimy things did crawl with legs upon the slimy sea. So he's like looking at the sea creatures in the water, and they're all disgusting, and he's just, this is not a good situation. About, in reel and rout, the death fires danced at night. The water, like a witch's oils, burnt green and blue and white. And some in dreams assured were of the spirit that plagued us so. 9 fathom deep he'd followed us from the land of mist and snow. And every tongue through utter drought was withered at the root. We could not speak no more than if we had been choked with soot. Ah, well a day, what evil looks had I from old and young. Instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung. So the albatross around the neck is one of the most memorable images in this poem. In fact, this term is often used in a political context to refer to a situation which haunts an individual. For example, you could say, former President Nixon was haunted by Watergate. It was an albatross around his neck. It was something that he could not get over. The crime of killing this bird and putting them into the state of the doldrums and causing them to dehydrate and potentially die is a deed that the narrator cannot escape, such to the point where the crew members of this ship have forced him to wear the dead bird around his neck, to pay penance. And you can imagine this bird probably doesn't smell very good, seeing as how we're in the sort of warmer latitudes at this point in time, and I imagine it's not the best thing to have around your neck for a long period of time. Okay, part 3. And by the way, shooting the albatross, as if it weren't obvious from a romantic context, shooting an albatross is a transgression against nature, a senseless transgression against nature. It's kind of like, a kid killing a squirrel or something just for fun, or like chopping down a little tree and not really caring anything about it. We do things against nature sometimes without reason, and that's the worst. Like if you kill something because you need to eat it, that's different. But if you shoot an albatross because you're bored, especially after you made friends with the bird and like communed with it, and then you decided to kill it because it just was something you decided to do, this is a pretty serious deal in Coleridge's mind. And he's trying to situate this as a very, very severe crime to have committed, even though a lot of his readers may not see it that way. There passed a weary time. Each throat was parched and glazed each eye. A weary time, how glazed each weary eye. When looking westward, I beheld a something in the sky. At first it seemed a little speck, and then it seemed a mist. It moved and took at last a certain shape I wist. A speck, a mist, a shape I wist, and still it neared and neared. As if it had dodged a water sprite, it plunged and tacked and veered. With throats unslaked, with black lips baked, we could not laugh nor wail. Through utter drought all dumb we stood. I bit my arm, I sucked the blood, and cried, a sail, a sail. So there is a boat coming towards them, and to warn his fellow crewmen, he doesn't have any moisture in his mouth, so he has to bite his arm and use it's a pretty graphic image. He has to use the blood to to basically make it to where his voice will work so he can tell them that this boat is coming. Now, what is the problem here? Why is there a boat approaching in the doldrums? If there's no wind, there should not be a boat approaching. So something isn't right about this situation from the get-go. And so I think that's important to note that, why is there a boat coming towards them in a time before engines and when there is no wind? Okay. With throats unslaked, with black lips baked, agape they heard me call. Gramercy, they for joy did grin, and all at once their breath drew in, as they were drinking all. See, see, I cried, she tacks no more, hither to work us wheel. Without a breeze, without a tide, she steadies with upright keel. The western wave was all aflame, the day was well nigh done. Almost upon the western wave rested the broad, bright sun, when that strange shape drove suddenly betwixt us and the sun. And straight the sun was flecked with bars. Heaven's mother send us grace, as if through a dungeon grate he peered with broad and burning face. Alas, I thought, my heart beat loud, how fast she nears and nears. Are those her sails that glance in the sun like restless gossameres? Are those her ribs through which the sun did peer as through a grate? And is that woman all her crew? Is that a death, and are there two? Is death that woman's mate? So when the ship gets closer, it becomes apparent that this is not a normal ship. First of all, they can see the sun through the ribs of the ship, which means that the ship is like open and broken. It's a ghost ship, basically, right? It's got torn sails. You can see through it. It's not supposed to be moving, but it is, which explains why it was coming towards us. So we know that we've entered the realm of the supernatural here. And it is important to note that Samuel Taylor Coleridge was an opium addict. I did leave that. I don't like to lead with that detail because that shouldn't be the defining detail of his life. But things often get weird in Coleridge's poems because, frankly, Coleridge used the opiate trance to imagine these scenes a lot of the times. And so it does get a little strange. Okay. Her lips were red, her looks were free, her locks were yellow as gold. Her skin was white as leprosy, the nightmare life in death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold. So on the ship there is a Grim Reaper, basically a death, or death, the personification thereof. And there is a woman who, even though she has these, she looks kind of pretty, she also looks like she's dead. Like she's like a beautiful woman, but she's recently deceased. So there's no color in her face, and it looks like she has leprosy almost. So it's kind of this weird dualistic image of like the beautiful and the horrific at the same time. And he refers to her as life in death. So this is death and life in death. And they are, it says, the naked hulk alongside came, referring to the boat, and the twain were casting dice. The game is done, I've won, quoth she, and whistles thrice. So they're playing dice, like this lady and death, the Grim Reaper, are playing dice on this boat that is a ghost boat, and what is going on? Okay, let's see. The sun's rim dips, the stars rush out. At one stride comes the dark. With far-heard whisper o'er the sea, off shot the spectre bark. So then the boat, just like the game of dice ends, the lady wins, she cries out, and then the boat disappears. Gone, faster than it came. We listened and looked sideways up. Fear at my heart, as at a cup, my lifeblood seemed to sip. The stars were dim and thick the night. The steersman's face by his lamp gleamed white. From the sails the dew did drip. Till clomb above the eastern bar the horned moon with one bright star above the nether tip. Sorry, within the nether tip. I thought I could remember that. One after one by the star-dogged moon, too quick for groan or sigh, each turned his face with a ghastly pang and cursed me with his eye. 4 times 50 living men, and I heard nor sigh nor groan. With heavy thump, a lifeless lump, they dropped down one by one. The souls did from their bodies fly, they fled to bliss or woe, and every soul, it passed me by like the whiz of my crossbow. So after this encounter with the ghost ship and the weird game of dice, everyone on the boat except for him drops dead. Okay, it's turning into a horror story, basically, right? So we assume that the dice game that was being played was for his own life, right? Will you live? Maybe, maybe not. And then life and death, she wins. He's like, oh, I've won, I've won. So he survives, but he's surrounded by death. So he literally becomes life and death himself, right? And then here's the wedding guest again. I fear thee, ancient mariner. I fear thy skinny hand, and thou art long and lank and brown, as is the ribbed sea sand. I fear thee in thy glittering eye, and thy skinny hand so brown. Fear not, thou wedding guest, this body drop not down. Alone, alone, all alone, alone on a wide, wide sea. And never a saint took pity on my soul in agony. The many men so beautiful, and they all dead did lie. And 1,000 slimy things lived on, and so did I. I looked upon the rotting sea, and drew my eyes away. I looked upon the rotting deck, and there the dead men lay. I looked to heaven and tried to pray, but ere a prayer had gushed, a wicked whisper came and made my heart as dry as dust. I closed my lids and kept them closed, and the balls like pulses beat. For the sky and the sea and the sea and the sky lay dead like a load on my weary eye, and the dead were at my feet. The cold sweat melted from their limbs, nor rot nor reek did they. The look with which they looked on me had never passed away. An orphan's curse would drag to hell a spirit from on high. But oh, more terrible than that is the curse in a dead man's eye. 7 days, 7 nights I saw that curse, and yet I could not die. The moving moon went up the sky and nowhere did abide. Softly she was going up, and a star or two beside. Her beams bemocked the sultry main, like April hoarfrost spread. But where the ship's huge shadow lay, the charmed water burnt always a still and awful red. Beyond the shadow of the ship I watched the water snakes. They moved in tracks of shining white, and when they reared the elfish light fell off in hoary flakes. Within the shadow of the ship I watched their rich attire. Blue, glossy green, and velvet black, they coiled and swam, and every track was a flash of golden fire. Oh, happy living things, no tongue their beauty might declare. A spring of love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them unaware. Sure, my kind saint took pity on me, and I blessed them unaware. The selfsame moment I could pray, and from my neck so free, the albatross fell off and sank like lead into the sea. All right, so he's just gone through this incident where all of his crew members have died. It's just him on the boat by himself in the middle of the ocean, and he's got nothing. And remember, originally he said, and 1,000 slimy things lived on, and so did I. And those slimy things were a reference to the snakes in the water snakes. And he looked on them at first, and he thought, oh, they're slimy, they're awful, they're gross, I hate them. Now he looks on them, and he sees that they are beautiful. He says, the elvish light fell off in hoary flakes. I watched their rich attire, right? He refers to all these, he refers to them as being beautiful, and he says, oh, happy living things, no tongue their beauty might declare. When he does that, when he feels love for these creatures, a moment of redemption has occurred, all right? So if he's being punished for killing the albatross, his redemption comes when he views the snakes and understands them as beautiful. So both the albatross and the water snakes in this case represent nature, right? Nature is to him other, it's foreign. But when he accepts nature as being beautiful, as being not other than him, but something that he is a part of and that he loves, that's when the albatross falls off his neck. And that is to symbolize a moment of redemption that takes place in the poem. But, as we are about to see, he's not out of the woods yet. Yes, he's redeemed, but he still has to do penance for what he's done, right? And penance is the idea that you got to work off your sin. It's a concept that's very common in Catholicism, like you got to say 10 Hail Marys because you stole a cookie from the cookie jar, that kind of thing. So he's been forgiven, and because he's realized the error of his ways, but he still has to pay off what he has done. Okay. Part 5 of 7. Oh, sleep, it is a gentle thing, beloved from pole to pole. To Mary Queen the praise be given. She sent the gentle sleep from heaven that slid into my soul. The silly buckets on the deck that had so long remained, I dreamt that they were filled with dew, and when I awoke it rained. My lips were wet, my throat was cold, my garments all were dank. Sure I had drunken in my dreams, and still my body drank. I moved and could not feel my limbs, I was so light almost, I thought that I had died in sleep, and was a blessed ghost. And soon I heard a roaring wind, it did not come anear, but with its sound it shook the sails that were so thin and sere. The upper air burst into life, and 100 fire flags sheen. To and fro they were hurried about, and to and fro and in and out the wan stars danced between. And the coming wind did roar more loud, and the sails did sigh like sedge, and the rain poured down from one black cloud, the moon was at its edge. The thick black cloud was cleft, and still the moon was at its side. Like waters shot from some high crag, the lightning fell with never a jag, a river steep and wide. The loud wind never reached the ship, yet now the ship moved on. Beneath the lightning and the moon the dead men gave a groan. They groaned, they stirred, they all uprose, nor spake, nor moved their eyes. It had been strange, even in a dream, to have seen those dead men rise. The helmsman steered, the ship moved on, yet never a breeze up blew. The mariners all gone work the ropes where they were wont to do. They raised their limbs like lifeless tools. We were a ghastly crew. The body of my brother's son stood by me, knee to knee. The body and I pulled at one rope, but he said naught to me. Okay, so now the horror story continues. Yes, he's had this moment of redemption. He is now forgiven, but he still has to get back to where he was. He still has to go through the rest of like purgatory, for lack of a better term. And after he has this moment of redemption and it starts to rain, that's when the zombies come into play. Okay, so this is literally the dead crew getting up and helping him steer the ship back home, basically. Now, this is strange because the ship, he could not power it himself. So without this happening, he was not going to be able to get home. It's impossible for one man to work a ship of this size and get home. But this is like, you got to think, zombie stuff is really ensconced in our culture. It's not unusual, but at the time this poem was written, this is an unusual thing. The dead don't rise. And if they do, it's very strange. It's not something that's like, oh, wait, another zombie movie? Great. So this is a big deal. Okay. And he has to work the ropes with the body of his brother's son, which is pretty dark. Okay. Wait, I missed a line. I fear the ancient mariner. Be calm, thou wedding guest. 'Twas not those souls that fled in pain, to which their corpses came again, but a troop of spirits blest. For when it dawned, they dropped their arms and clustered round the mast. Sweet sounds rose slowly through their mouths and from their bodies passed. This is really weird. Like at night or at dawn, they drop their arms and cluster around the mast, and they're making these sweet, like, ah noises. Like, this is a weird image. Around and around flew each sweet sound, then darted to the sun. Slowly the sounds came back again, now mixed, now one by one. Sometimes a dropping from the sky, I heard the skylark sing. Sometimes all little birds that are, how they seem to fill the sea and air with their sweet jargoning. And now 'twas like all instruments, now like a lonely flute, and now it is an angel's song that makes the heavens be mute. It ceased, yet still the sails made on, all a pleasant noise till noon, a noise like of a hidden brook in the leafy month of June, that to the sleeping woods all night singeth a quiet tune. Till noon we quietly sailed on, yet never a breeze did breathe. Slowly and smoothly went the ship, moved onward from beneath. Under the keel 9 fathom deep, from the land of mist and snow, the spirit slid, and it was he that made the ship to go. The sails at noon left off their tune, and the ship stood still also. The sun, right up above the mast, had fixed her to the ocean. But in a minute she gone stir with a short, uneasy motion. Backwards and forwards half her length with a short, uneasy motion. Then like a pawing horse let go, she made a sudden bound. It flung the blood into my head, and I fell down in a swound. How long in that same fit I lay, I have not to declare. But ere my living life returned, I heard and in my soul discerned two voices in the air. Is it he, quoth one, is this the man, by him who died on cross? With his cruel bow he laid full low the harmless albatross. The spirit who bideth by himself in the land of mist and snow, he loved the bird that loved the man who shot him with his bow. The other was a softer voice, as soft as honeydew. Quoth he, the man hath penance done, and penance more will do. So he's being driven home by spirits who have they've forgiven him, but they're still looking at him like, is this the guy that caused all these problems? Well, he's not done yet. He's got penance to do, right? And so we'll see what that penance is. Part 6, we're getting closer now. And this is the conversation between the same two spirits that we just left off. So it is, I'm not going to read where it says first voice, second voice, first voice. I'll let you follow on with that. But tell me, speak again, thy soft response renewing. What makes that ship drive on so fast? What is the ocean doing? Still as a slave before his lord, the ocean hath no blast. His great bright eye most silently up to the moon is cast. If he may know which way to go, for she guides him smooth or grim. See, brother, see how graciously she looketh down on him. But why drives on that ship so fast, without wave or wind? The air is cut away before, and closes from behind. Fly, brother, fly, more high, or we shall be belated. For slow and slow that ship will go when the mariner's trance is abated. So it's like the ship is going fast because he's asleep, which is weird. It's like when he goes to sleep, the ship is flying, but when he wakes up, it's going to be going slow again. I don't know. It's a weird detail. Coleridge is a weird dude. I think I mentioned that. I woke, and we were sailing on, as in a gentle weather. 'Twas night, calm night, the moon was high, the dead men stood together. I missed some lines, hold on. All stood together on the deck for a charnel dungeon fitter. All fixed on me their stony eyes that in the moon did glitter. The pang, the curse with which they died had never passed away. I could not draw my eyes from theirs, nor turn them up to pray. And now this spell was snapped once more. I viewed the ocean green, and looked far forth, yet little saw of what else had been seen. Like one that on a lonesome road doth walk in fear and dread, and having once turned round walks on, and turns no more his head, because he knows a frightful fiend doth close behind him tread. But soon there breathed a wind on me, nor sound nor motion made. Its path was not upon the sea in ripple or in shade. It raised my hair, it fanned my cheek like a meadow gale of spring. Come on. It mingled strangely with my fears, yet it felt like a welcoming. Swiftly, swiftly flew the ship, yet she sailed softly too. Sweetly, sweetly blew the breeze, on me alone it blew. O dream of joy, is this indeed the lighthouse top I see? Is this the hill? Is this the kirk? Is this mine own country? We drifted o'er the harbour bar, and I with sobs did pray, O let me be awake, my God, or let me sleep always. The harbour bay was clear as glass, so smoothly it was strown, and on the bay the moonlight lay, and the shadow of the moon. The rock shone bright, the kirk no less, that stands above the rock. The moonlight steeped in silentness the steady weathercock. And the bay was white with silent light, till rising from the same, full many shapes that shadows were, in crimson colours came. A little distance from the prow those crimson shadows were. I turned my eyes upon the deck, O Christ, what I saw there! Each corpse lay flat, lifeless and flat, and by the holy rood, a man all light, a seraph man, on every corpse there stood. So he's been taken back to England, to the harbor, by some spirits who had possessed these zombies. And he's looking at his home country, and he's crying tears of joy, and he turns around and he sees all of the bodies have dropped to the deck again. They're laying lifeless, and there are seraph men standing on top of them, meaning angels. There are angels standing on the bodies of these men, right? This seraph band each waved his hand. It was a heavenly sight. They stood as signals to the land, each one a lovely light. This seraph band each waved his hand, no voice did they impart, no voice, but oh, the silence sank like music on my heart. But soon I heard the dash of oars, I heard the pilot's cheer. My head was turned perforce away, and I saw a boat appear. The pilot and the pilot's boy, I heard them coming fast. Dear Lord, in heaven it was a joy the dead man could not blast. I saw a third, I heard his voice. It is the hermit good. He singeth loud his godly hymns that he makes in the wood. He'll shrieve my soul, he'll wash away the albatross's blood. So as he's standing there looking at these angels, standing on these bodies, he hears these voices coming and he turns and looks and here's a man, the pilot, whoever that is, and his boy are rowing a boat and they have the hermit with them. Now the hermit is like a holy man. Coleridge's version of the holy man is very much in the vein of the romantic because a holy man is a man who is close to nature. So the hermit good who lives in the wood is like Coleridge's version of a saint. And when the mariner sees this man coming, he thinks, oh, here comes my redemption. This man will heal me. He will wash away the albatross's blood, right? All right. So this is part 7. This is the final part. Let's see what happens. This hermit good lives in that wood which slopes down to the sea. How loudly his sweet voice he rears. He loves to talk with mariners that come from a far country. He kneels at morn and noon and eve. He hath a cushion plump. It is the moss that wholly hides the rotted old oak stump. So this guy like literally lives in the woods. He's like sitting on moss instead of a chair. The skiff boat neared, I heard them talk. Why, this is strange, I trow. What are those lights, so many and fair, that signal made but now? Strange, by my faith, the hermit said, and they answered not our cheer. The planks look warped, and see those sails, how thin they are and sere. I never saw aught like to them, unless perchance it were brown skeletons of leaves that lag my forest brook along, when the ivy tod is heavy with snow, and the owlet whoops to the wolf below that eats the she-wolf's young. Dear Lord, it hath a fiendish look, the pilot made reply. I am afeard. Push on, said the hermit cheerily. The boat came closer to the ship, but I nor spake nor stirred. The boat came close beneath the ship, and a strange sound was heard. Under the water it rumbled on, still louder and more dread. It reached the ship, it split the bay, the ship went down like lead. Stunned by that loud and dreadful sound which sky and ocean smote, like one that hath been 7 days drowned, my body lay afloat. But swift as dreams myself I found within the pilot's boat. So the boat just sinks for no reason other than supernatural intervention. And the mariner's body is floating on the water. But eventually he's taken into the boat by the pilot and the pilot's boy and the hermit, right? So now he's in the boat with these people. Upon the whirl where sank the ship, the boat spun round and round. And all was still, save that the hill was telling of the sound. I moved my lips, the pilot shrieked and fell down in a fit. The holy hermit raised his eyes and prayed where he did sit. I took the oars, the pilot's boy, who now doth crazy go, laughed loud and long, and all the while his eyes went to and fro. Ha ha, quoth he, full plain I see, the devil knows how to row. And now all in my own country I stood on the firm land. The hermit stepped forth from the boat, and scarcely he could stand. Oh, shrieve me, holy man! The hermit crossed his brow. Say quick, quoth he, I bid thee say, what manner of man art thou? So he asks, he sees the hermit, he's like, oh, holy man, save me. And the hermit is like, dude, what is your deal? Like, what are you? He's like bothered. He's so appalled by the state of this man. Presumably because of killing the albatross, like looming over him. He's like, good God, what is this guy? Like, I don't even know if I can save you, man. Forthwith this frame of mine was wrenched with a woeful agony, which forced me to begin my tale, and then it let me free. Since then, at an uncertain hour, that agony returns. Until my ghastly tale is told, this heart within me burns. So when the hermit asks, like, bro, what's your deal? He tells him the story, and then now he has to tell this story all the time. He'll be in a place and he'll get this weird feeling, and he's like, I got to tell somebody the story. I pass like night from land to land. I have strange power of speech. The moment that his face I see, I know the man that must hear me. To him my tale I teach. What loud uproar bursts from that door? The wedding guests are there. But in the garden bower the bride and the bridesmaids singing are. And hark, the little vesper bell which biddeth me to prayer. So then the wedding comes in, and it's like the story's over. Um, O wedding guest, this soul hath been alone on a wide, wide sea. So lonely it was that God himself scarce seemed there to be. O sweeter than the marriage feast, 'tis sweeter far to me, to walk together to the kirk with a goodly company. To walk together to the kirk, and all together pray, while each to his great Father bends, old men and babes, and loving friends, and youths and maidens gay. Farewell, farewell, but this I tell to thee, thou wedding guest, he prayeth well who loveth well, both man and bird and beast. He prayeth best who loveth best, all things, both great and small. For the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. So this is the lesson, the moral of the story, is that love all things great and small, all living things. We're all part of the same creation, and so we should have this appreciation for these things, the appreciation that the mariner himself did not have, which is why he chose to kill the albatross. And until he learned that appreciation by praising the water snakes, he was doomed, right? Likewise, humanity is in a similar position with its relationship to nature. Unless we learn to love that which is other from ourselves, unless we gain appreciation for the water snakes or whatever icky, creepy, crawly thing, we will never really be redeemed. We will always be at odds with ourselves and in great danger of extinction and this kind of thing. And remember, this is way before any of like the natural not natural. Why did I say natural? Like current industry, industrialization, um, like consumerism, pollution. This is before any of that, and Coleridge could still see, like, hey man, we need to be nicer to nature, or it's going to bite us. Too bad we didn't listen, right? Okay, so here's the poem's finish. The mariner, whose eye is bright, whose beard with age is hoar, is gone, and now the wedding guest turned from the bridegroom's door. He went like one that hath been stunned, and is of sense forlorn. A sadder and a wiser man, he rose the morrow morn. And that is the end of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. It is a cautionary tale about transgression against nature. It is a definitive romantic work. It is one of the works that is commonly referenced when referring to romantic poetry. And so everything we mentioned about that, the preserving of nature, the reclaiming of the spiritual, the emphasis on the outpouring of emotion, all of this stuff is present in this poem, and I think it is a excellent work. If you didn't like it, keep it to yourself. No, I mean, you can send me an email. That poem sucked. You can do that if you really want. I love it. My cat is named after Samuel Taylor Coleridge. My dog is named after William Blake. I probably mentioned that in the last video, but that just goes to show you how much I love this stuff. And I hope you enjoyed it too, at least to the capacity that you could, given that it's probably not everyone's bag. But you will be given the opportunity to write on this poem, and so please keep it in mind. And have a lovely week. I will see you next time.